So hi, and thanks so much for joining me here in my shop as I start a new project on another 1920s radio, this one from 1929. And just before I get going, just in case you're a new subscriber and you're not so sure what's happening here, my style of making videos is essentially to come in my shop, turn on the cameras and get to work, and whatever happens next happens. So it turns into a bit of a saga for each radio I work on, and some good stuff happens and some bad stuff happens. Watch out, I say a lot of things that aren't true, partially because I'm simply wrong, partially because sometimes what comes out of my mouth is not what's in my head. That's my defense for the whole thing. So if you're watching, you got to keep your thinking cap on. And by the way, it's lots of fun for you to watch me as I try to guess what's going on and what needs fixing, for you to be doing the same thing. And based on the observations I can make here and show on video. So, well, let's stop looking at an empty bench. Let's take a look at the radio in question. Clean your glasses, get your eyes ready, because this is one beautiful looking radio. Here we go. Oh, that's me. That's me. Okay, let me step out of the way and we'll take a look at this. Oh my gosh, if this isn't one of the most fantastic radios I've had in my shop. The beautiful, beautiful cabinet here, all the way from 1929 to now. You know, that's 90 years. And here it is looking really, really excellent shape. The cabinet has no veneer, it's all solid wood. That's probably one of the reasons it looks the way it looks. Very fancy patterned here, we're going to take a closer look at. And if you've been watching my videos, then you saw me work on a 1928 radio recently, an RCA Victor, or Bosch as it might be called, radio. This one is extremely similar. This is an Eveready Model 32, which looks to me like it got mixed up with Bosch and everything else that was going on with that particular company. And this is really very, very similar to, electronically, to the coffin radio I finished just a short while ago, the RCA Victor. So, the owner has told me that this radio was working, but it has stopped working, probably related to the on-off switch. This is his thinking. So it's possible that all that's going to happen here is I'm going to find out the on-off switch doesn't work, and I'm going to repair the switch, replace it, or something of that sort. And that may be the end of it for this radio. Based on my experience, not too likely. Probably there's a lot that can be done to improve this radio's operation. So this is an AM radio, tuning the same broadcast band we listened to today. So let's take a closer look at it. No, first, you know what? First I'm going to show you a little bit in a book. Just change my lighting here a little bit. I'm going to take a look at a really nice book I have. You see it on my, you can see it on my bench there. And just get it on camera. My camera will be on a bit of an angle here, but I'm sure you can tolerate it. So this is a wonderful book. It says volume 1. Is there a volume 2? Perhaps there is, and boy, I'd like to have it, but I've got volume 1 here. This is full of the information that was provided at the time these radios were being sold. So it's full of great stuff, and it covers literally all the radios made in the 1920s, including the one we just looked at. So I'm going to flip to that page there, which I marked so I wouldn't have to leaf through it like this. There it is. Okay, I was looking at this last night a little bit when I was getting ready for today, and I got quite a laugh out of it. We'll see if I can make you laugh too. So you see Eveready radio receivers. You'll see on the radio behind me that this is embossed right on the front. In fact, this is the radio right here, Model 32, It's exactly what I've got behind me. Model 32 console in a cabinet of rich walnut finish that fits in any decorative scheme whatever. Well, I'm not so sure about 2018 if it still fits in anybody's decorative scheme, but dynamic speaker built in. Chassis has 8 tubes including the rectifier. List price $175 without the tubes. There you can see down here, 31st of June. See radio retailing, page 67. Hey, maybe we'll pop to this page. I didn't notice this last night. Radio retailing, so we'll take a look at that. Maybe we'll find out how many of these they sold. But first, this is the Model 32. Here's the Model 33. So when we look at the 33 here, what it says a larger, more luxurious console in walnut finish with decorative carvings. Same all-electric chassis as Model 32. So it's the same radio inside here as this one. Cabinet designs are exclusive with Eveready. So a little more money, $210 instead of the $175. So I looked at these two pictures for quite a while to try to figure out, well, what exactly are you paying the extra money for? It's the same radio inside. So there's a little bit of detail that's a little different. But the biggest change that I could see here between these two radios is this detail on the legs. These balls here that are on the legs, they're here. This is less dramatic, this piece here. So I guess what they were trying to say here about larger, more luxurious, really what they were trying to say is if you want a radio with balls, this is the one you want to get. This radio has balls. So then I went on to take a look at this radio. This is the number 54. It clearly is a fancier looking radio. There's a little bit of a different grill on it than these two. I think don't see the price here, but I suspect it's much higher. The thing about this now, I thought, okay, so no balls. What will be on this other radio? Now, I don't really want to describe in detail what this little part looks like, okay? But you know, when you look at it, you can kind of only conclude that this is representative of a male part, a male human part there. I won't say much more, but basically no balls, and guess what, down here. So I thought that was kind of humorous. But in any case, this is all the information I can find about this radio in this particular book. Wonderful though. And that's the predecessor radio I did, the RCA Victor I did. Inside a coffin box, which is actually the same, almost the same radio electronically. So here we go. That's a wonderful book. Now let's go back to the radio here. And we'll put a little more light on it. So we're going to start by taking a little bit of a closer look at the front of the radio. Move my camera forward here. Okay, so beautiful wooden knobs. Almost certainly these are the original knobs that came with it. Fantastic. It has this fantastic wood panel here, which again I was looking at last night when I brought the radio in here. By the way, this radio weighs 80 pounds. This is a monster to try to pick up and move. So, and when I look in the back, you'll see why it weighs 80 pounds. How this was made is really curious to me. This fantastic detail here with what looks like, I don't know, flowers, some kind of plant. These two fancy shapes. Would you call it a fleur de lis? I don't think so, but this piece comes down here and this ribbon piece kind of loops around and flows down here. It's fantastic. Here is the word Eveready kind of embossed in here. Now, at first glance, I thought somebody must have carved this, but that's ridiculous. I mean, they made these radios by the thousands. In fact, I was going to check in the book there and forgot, because I think I can find out how many of these were actually made and sold. So somehow they mass-produced this panel. I'm not aware of how it was done. I can only imagine that this is press molded somehow. You know, in 1929, they didn't really have plastics as such, but they had various resins. Used resin materials, often with wood fiber in it, and that's what this could be. This could be resin and wood fiber pressed into a mold to give all this detail here. You look down the speaker, where the speaker is. All that continues down here. It just gives this radio a heck of a look. It's really, really something. I've never seen anything quite like this on a radio. And if you look at the detail on this knob, even that's fantastic. Look at that. Doesn't that make you want to grab and turn that knob? And of course it sends the big message of this is an important knob, more important than these two. Yeah. Wonderful. Of course you can see the tuning dial moving. So let's see, that says 890 in red, and here it says 40. So what it's got going here is a so I hear bad news. So I can hear a little scratching, a little scraping. I can see a scrape mark on the front. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about that. So when I turn this all the way, look at that, you can see there's a scrape mark obliterating this line a little bit. It gets a little bad up here. So I think the radio is pushed too far forward. It's pressing against this metal frame here. That's not good. But anyway, I was going to say it has a scale, basically, I'm sure, 0 to 100. And then it has an actual frequency scale in red. It's a little bit faded. 510. 510. That's no 1510. Yeah, a little faded, hard to see. Okay. Just also the cloth here is worn out. Much of the material is missing, and I've got some beautiful cloth to replace this with. It will look fantastic in this radio. Cloth I've been saving. I've been saving for years, in fact, waiting for the right radio to come, and this is definitely it. I'm nervous working on this radio. This is a real piece of history here. This is museum quality stuff, no doubt about it. Museums would be happy to have this radio. And this, of course, is owned privately by an individual who is now responsible for it, and that's how I look at it. And I'm responsible for it while it's here in my house. So I don't plan to do anything that puts this radio at risk. And I don't plan to do anything crazy with it whatsoever. If it turns out that it works really pretty good, I'm just going to return it to the owner. If all it is this switch. This is not something to fool around with. It really isn't. And it would weigh heavy on me if I literally, say, dropped the chassis on the floor and smashed it. That's the kind of thing that freaks me out about this thing. The other thing that's really surprising is the spindly legs down there, which of course is part of the style in the late 1920s. You know, this is 90 years later. This guy is still rock solid. Unbelievable. So there's craftsmanship inside here, which is unlike what we would encounter today in our furniture. You know, unless you're paying a big buck. And this, you know, to own this radio in 1929, I'm sure the price I read was at $175. I'm sure that was a big buck back then. This was a major investment. So another thing too is that if you go back just a couple of years earlier, radios don't look like this at all. And they have multiple big knobs on them. And to tune them, you have to tune a number of knobs all at once. Really difficult to use. So around about 1927, 26, somewhere in there, radios began coming out with a single knob, where they had learned how to make one knob move a number of things in the radio, instead of having a knob for each thing. So So in terms of the history of radios, you might want to think of this as one of the earliest modern radio. For those of us today who have radios, and we do, and we look to tune them or turn them or fool around with them, we immediately look for a single tuning knob, a volume control, and a tone control. That's exactly what's on this radio. As I say, just go back another couple of years, and the picture changes entirely. And given your skills today, lack of skills, in fact, most of us today tune radios by, pushing buttons or just, dialing a number on a, they're all digitally tuned modern radios. You just go back a year or two, radio technology is really quite different and a major problem to tune and to use. Very inconvenient, very tricky to use. So I think that's what this represents. In terms of history, we're looking at something, an example of a big advancement, really. Then the next advancement comes, and I'm not a historian here, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. The next advancement comes in the very early 1930s, in which a new technique was developed called superheterodyne technique, and that solved quite a few problems with radios, but introduced a whole new set of them. So that's interesting in a way. These radios of this vintage, electronically, are extremely simple to understand. They're very, very simple. Come 1930, 32, 31, 30, somewhere in there, radios come out that are now very tricky to understand. They have a frequency converter built into them. They have fixed tuning stages in it. They're quite different, and they take a lot more thinking power to understand them. So there's a certain intuitiveness about this radio. So enough talk, eh? So we look at the back. Let's see if I can turn this around now. Find out how strong I am here. Okay, there we go. So, it's a good thing when the owner dropped this off, he demonstrated right away what's going on with this piece. Because at a glance, this looks like a permanent piece on the back, and you'd have to kind of work through here somehow, but in fact, no. This is actually clipped in. Can you believe it? It lifts out. There's a couple little pins down here going into holes. And up here are these clips. I'm sure you've seen stuff like this around. Just going into some grips that must be right here. So again, it's just fantastic. Here, 1929. Hey, what's going on here? Look at how this is made. Okay, there's remnants of a cloth here. Aha! So this was originally cloth covered. Pretty sure that's what that tells us right there. Look, let's see on that. It looks to me like these pieces of wood here, these strips, I'll bet you these are just pounded in place. I bet you these are just pounded in. You probably pry these out, lay your cloth on it, and then tap these back down, pinching the cloth, just a tiny bit of which remained here. It's a little odd that the radio would be wide open like this, because that would allow dust in, and you just got to imagine that would be a detriment to selling this. You just hear someone saying, I'll never be able to get the dust out of that. You don't want dust in here either. Electronically, electrically, it's not a good idea. So that's probably the story on this guy. Yeah, just perfectly straight. It's fantastic. How about we take a look at the joinery? I'm not a woodworking guy, but there's no surprise that this has been done using special wood joints, of course. See, a lot of people, there were a lot of people with skills in cabinet making, and those skills transferred directly to making cabinets for radio. So here we are, looking at the back right up here. It says Model 32. Nice brass piece. And of course, here's the radio chassis. Okay, this is the radio part. This is the power supply and the amplifier, the audio amplifier here. Of course, the speakers down at the bottom. Now, what do we got here? There's a switch here. This is probably a switch for voltage. Probably. It's a 3-position switch, so it's probably for different voltages. Back in 1929, I think the voltage at your house was very, very poorly controlled. The average voltage would be poorly controlled, and the specific voltage at the moment would also be very poorly controlled. If somebody on your power circuit that you were getting power to your house for your one light bulb was running a motor, I'll bet you your lights were going up and down because your neighbor had some motorized thing, or some industry was on the same power circuit that your house was on. It was a very early stage. You know, it's another thing too. If you go back a little bit in time, radios could not be plugged into the wall. They all ran on batteries. And the power supply, which essentially converts the alternating current in your house circuitry into appropriate voltages and power type for the radio, this was a somewhat, well, I guess I could say a recent invention. I think it was pretty straightened out by 1929. If you can go just back a couple of years, you could have a battery operated radio. You could buy one of these. It didn't look like this, but you could buy this kind of thing, plug it in the wall and hook wires over to your old battery and eliminate the battery. So for a couple of years there, battery eliminators were a big thing. I have a couple here from probably 1926, 27, somewhere around there. I don't really know. Okay, so in looking in the back, you see something plugged in. Something gets plugged in here. It says field. Here it says speaker. And to my surprise, here's another one. It says phono. This plug is quite similar to this. Can't quite see it there, I guess, in the camera. I'm a little surprised to see that. And then way over here we've got ground, short antenna, and I'll bet you this other post says long antenna. Some holes in the cabinet, probably to put in a screwdriver to engage with some tunable component back in here. There's something right here. You can actually see the screw head right in the hole. So this is also some kind of trimmer or tuning thing to tune the radio to align it or something like that. Basically the signal kind of just travels through the radio. So the antenna will be feeding into this tube. This is a 27. In fact, 27, 27, 27, 27. They're all 27s through here. But these will be RF amplifiers boosting the signal from the antenna. So I'm going to guess there's 3 amplifiers, and the very strong signal is sent to this tube, which would be the detector tube. It's possible this guy's the detector tube. You know what? It's possible the detector tube is in here. Ah, there it is. So that's the detector tube. This will be the first audio tube. There's no more radio signal at this point, just the sound signal. And then it's conveyed over to these 2 tubes, which are arranged in a surprisingly modern arrangement that I guess was discovered fairly early on, called push-pull. And these 2 tubes work together to provide an even, a stronger than a single tube signal to the speaker. So this has got some, no it doesn't. This is the one without the balls, but nevertheless. Put this back on. Excellent. So I believe the owner has purchased new tubes. Of course, there are no new tubes. They're all old at this point. They might be tubes that were never operated. I have some more tubes that he's provided. These are either the new ones or these are the new ones. It doesn't matter to me. I'll be testing all these tubes, pre-war tubes. Obviously, they're talking about the Second World War because this is post First World War, isn't it? Now, there's the question. I just plug this guy in and give it a run. Sounds like fun to me. Let's take a look at the wires coming up from the speaker, and we'll figure out what this field coil is. So back at this time, there weren't the materials and the methods to make powerful, permanent magnets sufficient to drive these, to operate these speakers, which need to have a magnet in them for them to work. Coupled with that was the fact that this radio can benefit from a large coil in its power supply. So engineers were smart enough to realize those two things could go together. You could use the big coil here to become part of the power supply, and at the same time generate the magnetic field here that's required for the speaker to operate. And those were typically called field coils. You see, most speakers, of course, if you haven't been fooling around in your own house, modern speakers have 2 wires. This one's got 4. So these two go to this coil I'm talking about, the field coil. Plug them in there. And this will go to the actual voice coil. The coil that's sitting in the magnetic field is going to be driven and will drive the cone. Let me just take a peek at the cone there and see what kind of condition it's in. Well, disappointing. It's been repaired. I can't imagine what I'm seeing is original, but it looks like a good repair job on it. So this is going to go into the speaker spot here. Now, I'm going to turn this guy on. I gotta start by finding out what it is before I start messing it up myself. Any other little secret tricks here? We have this switch we need to look at a little more. Dark in there. And there's a light up there. It's a really fancy looking coil in behind this tube. We'll get a close look at it. Once I remove the chassis, we'll look at all these things closely. There's something very interesting up there, though. I don't think there's anything else I need to really look at. Well, maybe there is. A great big panel of information here behind this tube. Let's see what it says. Eveready AC receiver, serial number 3-4688, 25 to 60 cycle, 105 to 125 volts. So that's what this switch is probably doing here. Licensed by Canadian Radio Patents Limited only for the non-commercial reception of public radio telephone broadcasting. Patented 1914, 16, 17, all the way up to 24. This receiver guaranteed only when matched to line voltage. Canadian National Carbon Company. That's interesting. Canadian National Carbon Company. Montreal, Winnipeg, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. So right across Canada they have manufacturing facilities for this radio. Put this back in. Okay. Now I would hesitate to plug something like this right into the wall myself. But I have a way of plugging it in here which makes it safer. I'm just going to show you that. In case you're a new viewer, By the way, since I'm not doing teaching videos, this is not really a teaching video. I'm just showing you what I'm doing. I'm not claiming this is the best way to do things. I'm not making any claims here. I don't tend to be, work efficiently. I tend to work for fun. I try to increase the fun factor, the curiosity, the learning, all that kind of stuff. I'm not trying to be Mr. Efficiency. It's not my goal. Okay, I'm in a rush to nowhere. So first, let's take a look at the plug here. So this has been done properly. And see how the wires come around the prongs and then reach the screw. That's the way you want it. Just looking to see if the insulation is cracked, if there's a short right up in here. But in any case, I will be safe in my shop when I first turn this on. Even if there's a dead short in here, I'll be okay, because I'm using what's commonly called, let's see, is this going to make it? Wow, it just barely makes it. A dim bulb system. You can look that up on Google or wherever. I'm sure there's lots of people have great videos on how that works. I'm plugging it in here. Now, again, in case you're a new viewer, new subscriber, never watched my videos before. Okay, so this little box is actually plugged into a extension cord here. This gray wire runs up to this meter up here. Whoops, sorry about that. Let's get her up here. Up to this meter. This meter will show the voltage at the end of the plug here, that whatever I'm working on is plugged in. This meter shows the voltage in my house right now, around 120 volts. This is on all the time. This one will only show up when I've got the power on. These are the switches I use for doing it. Okay, and that's my safety warning to me. Watch out for this button here. Talking about so this button arms my box here. If I turn it on, a little light comes on. And this one selects the dim bulb circuit, or if I flip this up, might as well plug the radio right in the wall. It's the same deal. These meters will still be operating up here, telling us what's going on at the outlet. So normally I'm starting radios. Often I'm operating them continuously. Look, I almost turned it on here. With the switch down like this. The switch down, the power that reaches the radio goes through these two light bulbs. It's forced to go through these. In other words, these lights are in series with the radio, or in series with this outlet. That's kind of the idea of the dim bulb thing. This may seem like a clumsy, crummy way to do this. You may think, wow, that's really chintzy. I mean, it is chintzy. Look what I got here. This is chintzy. But the fact is, from a technical perspective and from working a shop like this is a great way to do it. I highly recommend any of you who are doing this stuff to set this up. Look, just get some junk out of your garbage, out of your box of garbage parts, and put something like this together. I've got two lights here, so I can actually loosen one off, and now all the power is forced through this bulb. So that puts an even higher restriction. But this one, I can't remember. Let's take a look. What is it? This is a 60 watt bulb here. This I believe is a 40 watt bulb, this one here. They're in parallel, so put them both in. A little less restriction, so I can control the amount of restriction here. So really great. If I really want to keep this in the circuit but have almost no restriction, I put two 100 watt bulbs in here. So now what happens if there's a problem? So let's say I plug this in and there's a short circuit in here, or right in the radio. The short circuit results in these two lights coming on full blast. And believe me, it's very noticeable. If, on the other hand, the radio is working normally, then it will draw some current. Some of that current will heat up the filaments in these bulbs, and they will glow to some degree. And if the current draw is low enough, you won't even see them glow. Normally they're glowing a little bit. Also, another interesting thing is the radio's demand for power changes, especially when you first switch it on. And that change in demand for power can tell you something about the operation of the radio, and you can just look at these bulbs and you can watch that the bulb's glow goes up and down. At the same time, this voltmeter will be moving up and down. So it's really, Yeah, voltmeter is helpful too. But really, these bulbs are great. I really encourage much better than just plugging something straight into the wall. That's not a good way to go. Okay. So having said all that, are we ready to turn on this radio? Are we ready? Let's switch cameras here. So we're looking at the back or the front. Nothing much going to happen on the front, so let's keep an eye on the back. You look for the tubes warming up, hear sound out of the speaker, no problem. We just don't know where the radio's tuned, but what does it matter now? I'm talking about that. There's no antenna. It's a tall one. So for the sake of having something on there as an antenna, I was actually suspicious that the frame that I pulled off the back would have an antenna in it somehow, a loop antenna in it. Didn't seem to though. So this is just a piece of junk wire I happen to have handy. Represents just about the worst in antennas. We'll hook it up to the short antenna post here. A radio like this usually needs a pretty good antenna, and that means a pretty long piece of wire, in the best case hanging right outside your house. Probably when this radio was in use originally, the owner did have an antenna set up outside their house. I think it was probably a very, very common thing. Okay, so next thing I got to do is I got to figure out volume control here on the front. So I can't really be sure. Probably volume's on the left, tone is on the right. No guarantee. Where's the switch? Wait, the switch is the toggle switch. Which way is on? Seems to be no indication of which way is on. So that's a little bit of a problem. I really like to apply power to it with the switch off to start with. You know, we have another option here too to start the radio up in stages, and that is for me to pull this field coil wire out of here. That basically puts an open circuit in the middle of the power supply so that no high voltage gets out into the radio. I'm not so concerned with this one because the owner told me it was working until very recently, and I'm not worried at all. In fact, if I was really worried, I would never start it up in the cabinet. It would be out on my bench. I would do more inspection work on it, and even some tests before starting it. But I'm looking for excitement this morning. So we can see what happens. Now, if this is going to come to life, I'm going to want to see the tubes in here. I'm going to darken it down. Let's go a little darker yet. Okay, so these tubes may not light up enough to be seen in the camera, but I'll be able to see them with my own eye. Actually, both my eyes. Usually at this point I delay turning it on because I'm thinking to myself, well, what haven't you thought of yet? What haven't you thought of? I don't think I thought of everything. Just looking at the condition of the power wire. It's pretty tough there. Where are you, camera? It's not the best right in here. It's really a tight bend. It's really. So here I'm looking for a short circuit again. If there is one, I should survive it. I'm feeling for wire. You know what? Wow, I don't like the looks of that. Let's gamble. Let's gamble this morning. Maybe if I could just hang. Can I? Okay, just bear with me here. I'm going to try to get those lights on camera. Just hang on. One moment here. Hey, like everybody, I'm listening to the discussions around our data in Facebook. I don't use Facebook myself. our data and that. And I learned something that we all need to realize is it's not our data that they're sharing. These companies take the facts that we reveal as we live our lives, surf the net, go to stores and stuff like that. The facts of that stuff is gathered up by these companies. They then make deductions from it and create a new set of facts about us. That new set of facts, maybe they're not really facts, okay, but that new data, that's their data. That's not ours. They can do whatever they want with it. So for instance, let's say you were going to shoe stores. Maybe you went to 3 shoe stores over 3 weeks. Google might conclude from that you are a shoe fanatic. Well, the fact you went to those stores, that's your data. The fact that they've now labeled you as a shoe fanatic, that's their data. And they're going to sell the shoe fanatic data. It's all theirs. You don't own it. You don't even know about it. So they say, oh, don't worry, you can download all your data from Facebook. As far as I know, and I don't know very far, you can download your data. You cannot get access to what your profile says about you, because that's not your data. They've created it from your data. There you go. Enough of that. Back to 1929. I've delayed the start of this long enough. I'm going to step in front of the camera here. We're going to do a little camera trick. Just please bear with me while I sort out what I'm doing. I'm try to get a 2-camera thing happening here right on the screen while we're talking. Just like that. Okay, so now in the top right hand corner you're looking at these 2 lights up here, and at the same time you can see the radio here. Okay, just a wee bit of a camera angle deal. I think we're ready now. Okay, so engage with the lights. Here we go. Power on. Watch the meter. Watch the lights. Watch the meter. Come on, little camera. You can do it. I know you can do it. Good enough. Watch the meter and watch the lights. Here we go. Okay, so you saw this meter go right up. It's reading 126. It's just not accurate. It's the same voltage here and here. The fact that it went right up and is sitting up here now means no current was drawn from the radio. Now, these lights didn't do anything. The radio is switched off. That's what this means. So lucky the on-off switch, I guessed correctly. Now I have another source of information here which I kind of breezed over, which I should talk about at this point. That's this box. A somewhat recent addition to my shop. It also reports the voltage at the outlet, 124. Actually means that other meter is pretty accurate. And this guy will show you all kinds of other stuff, wattage and all kinds of stuff. But mostly I don't look at them too much. So that's what's going on. So the next step now will be to switch on the radio and keep an eye for sure on these lights. Again, if there's a short circuit or something really hairy going on, those lights will be so bright I'll be freaked out. So I'm going over here to turn on the light, turn on the switch. Here we go. Here we go. Remember, it's a switch that apparently doesn't work. And the switch doesn't work. That's how it would appear. Okay, so that's a bit of a letdown, isn't it? Not unexpected. So really, to go further now, I gotta withdraw this whole thing from the cabinet. But first, being the smart guy I am, I'm gonna turn the power off here. And just an extra little safety thing I try to remember, just to pull the plug out when I want the radio to be off. I try to remember to pull the plug out. That pretty much guarantees it. Great. Now, let me just fix my screen here. Bear with me for a moment. We'll get rid of that extra camera there. Okay, carry on now. Getting this guy out of the cabinet. If you watched enough of my videos, then you know that when I do this kind of work, almost always I've never worked on a radio like the one I have in front of me. That's not always true, but most of the time. And it is true. I've never taken this kind of radio out of this kind of cabinet. So the first thing I'm thinking is there are tricks here that I should know, that any repair guy would know, that I may not know. And if I'm not careful, I will take the hard route to doing something easy. And you know, I don't want that to happen. That's not my idea of a good time. So when I look in here, I see very suspiciously this big board. And under it I see this board. This board is mounted right into the cabinet here. We've got a slot. I mean, this is a really well built thing. We've got a slot here. We've got a support here. It really looks like this board is kind of sitting on top of this board. This probably comes out with the whole radio on it. The radio's in two pieces, one here, one here. A lot of these radios, these pieces are actually physically separate. This one, they're bolted together. This is a cap here, so I may not be able to get off. Gotta loosen a screw. This is a cap. Under here will be the wires that are actually coming out of this unit and going into here. So in a big repair environment, like back in 1929 or 1930, one of the options would be to just disconnect this bad unit here, whip it out, whip in one that was bench fixed already from the last radio, whip it back in, return this to the customer, away you go, and then work on his power supply, and that'll be headed to the next radio. Stuff like that could be done. I don't know if they actually did that. So it was a bit of modularness in here. Okay. Okie dokie. Now, if that's the case, then there's probably some big screws going up through into this. Yeah, and they're loose. That's an indication that these have only been thumb tightened in the past. There's two of them. I think don't you call these stove bolts? Is that what that's called? Probably more. Yeah. Probably one more. That's probably it. Yeah. I'll be ready to slide out right now. So let's disconnect the speaker here. Okay, now it's got some knobs on the front. Got to remove. Another chance to look at the fantastic front on here. Okay, so these are flathead screws. Pretty tight. We get a little bit of a bigger screwdriver here. You know what? I may not have something here. This one is a little better. Let's see. Well, yeah. You might think, oh, it's just a knob. You know, this is a really important part of the radio. I don't want to break these or anything. This one has a brass ring inside, and the screw is actually threaded into the brass ring. So that means when you tighten down the screw, the pressure is contained in the brass ring, or whatever material that is, probably brass, and the strain is not passed onto the wood. If you've got a knob, a wooden knob, and you look inside, this happens. And there is no brass ring, it's just wood with a screw. Careful, you tighten these down, you'll split your knob will split. Doesn't that sound scary? Doctor, I'm suffering from the split knob. Okay, here she comes. Just take a quick look, make sure there's no surprises. That's fancy. Oh, they made that. They had some guy in the back carving these out. They couldn't have. So somehow these were machined into existence. Somehow. And just generally, you don't want to over tighten these things. Really, you want to tighten them just enough. There we go. Excellent shape. Take this guy off. Now I can see that there's some scratching just around this. And I'm going to guess that's from previous people taking a tool like this and putting it on like that and then turning it to loosen the thing off. That's my guess. This is thumb loose, which is just fine. Oh, there's a decorative ring here. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose any of these pieces. In my shop, it's easy to lose these pieces, I'm afraid. So that's just hanging loose, but these are right on the chassis. This guy's just going to flop in there, and I pull it out. Now, I actually have to prepare myself for this. I'm going to get 60 pounds of radio in my arm shortly, and you know, if I'm not ready to make it to where I'm going to go with it, I can't be dancing around with 60 pounds in my hand. So, for instance, I'm going to get my bench ready here, which is collected a pile of stuff. So we'll put these for now here. These guys too. And we'll bag all these parts. I think I'm going to get rid of this because I don't think it's big enough for the whole radio. Let me set this over here. Now, last thing you want to do is be hovering 60 pounds in the air above your bench and realize you can't set it down. But I'm pretty sure I got room. I think I'm just going to move this too, so make sure this wire's not hanging here. Okay, and now I take some of my power drink here. Thought. Okay, I think I'll let you continue to look at my bench. You'll just hear me complaining here as I try to extract this out the back, board and all. Yep, here it comes. One of the things that can happen when you're carrying stuff like this is the cord can be dragging on the ground and get caught on something. And what was that? I don't know. Here we go. Here comes a radio. There it is. This is what I heard. Look at that. It's a broken switch for sure. It's busted. Well, that solves that. Huh, gives you a chance to look right inside to see it work. Doubt that can be fixed. One of the rules I try to follow when I'm doing this work is to try to leave everything original, not change things for the sake of changing them. Only do the stuff you're kind of forced into. Try to leave everything as original as possible instead of quickly jumping in, changing all the capacitors. Chances are there aren't that many parts inside here anyway. So what are we going to do here? We'll take a close look at the switch. I can defeat the switch easy enough just by shorting these wires together, and we can give it another shot. And I have the feeling that switch is finished. I think I have an old vintage switch somewhere that we could actually put in there and would look pretty good. Otherwise, I got these. I got modern ones which just aren't going to look quite right. They'll certainly work though. I'll have to rummage around and see what I got. Take a look inside. Grab my close-up camera here. I think the camera is on autofocus, which might do some bad stuff. Okay, let's see if we can look right inside this guy. Okay, when I flip the switch, you'll see something jump inside. Okay, can you see there's a spring in there? Only if I hold it right. Spring right there? I'll try and move it really slowly now. Oh, see, it really, it's interesting. The spring in the mechanism, it only wants to be one way or the other, nowhere in between. It's a little like an electron jumping energy bands, isn't it? Only one side or the other. So that's typical of all these toggle switches. Sorry, bad camera work here. Made in USA. Sorry about the focus going. I've got the camera upside down, I can't move it. What's that thing at the top? AO? OA? I don't know. That's no doubt the original guy though. So like I said, fixing it, wow, I don't know how you could. I guess, there's probably some way of doing it. Don't think that's what's going to happen in this case. A little bit of a damage in the wire here. So I'm looking for copper or some evidence that the conductor is bared off. There's no problem there. Okay, now we got it out on my bench. We better take a close look at it. See what we can see before I get them off. Okay, not quite that close a look. Let's try this. So now we can see the whole number wheel. I thought there was no such thing as plastic in the 1920s, but this really feels like modern plastic. Just, wow, is it possible that it's a replacement of some sort? I doubt it. I doubt it very, very much. There's some kind of material here. Some of you may know what this actually is, but I'm not sure it can be plastic in the modern sense. And I can start seeing some of the somewhat serious problems that can occur in these radios. There's one already I can spot. Not quite visible on the camera. What else can we see at this point? Here's the string. The string is actually wire. This is actually a piece of wire here. Comes up over here, and there's a tensioning spring up here just out of sight. So having a piece of wire means this will probably never break, but it's a hint that this is doing heavy duty work. And a piece of string was just not going to do it for them. Look at this mysterious coil over here. This guy here. If I tune the radio, does it move? Oh yeah. So what makes it mysterious? Oh, look at that. What's happening there? Okay, so something, this is not supposed to work this way, I'm sure. You're not supposed to do this. So there's probably a drive shaft going all the way through here, and it's probably slipping on this. And again, this is an evidence of a serious problem with this radio, which is a sad deal. Let's just keep going and see. See what we can see with the big camera here before I get the close-up going. Okay, another interesting question with all these old radios is there some asbestos involved in this thing? So if we look at the power supply, behind these holes is a grid work of some sort. Why they would bother doing that? These holes do not have any kind of grid work, but this has some kind of a grid behind it. Looks like a cloth-like material. Is that asbestos? I don't know why it would be, but we should just be a little bit conscious of it. Not that you got to run away screaming when you see asbestos. I see some more things here that look like tuning adjustments. It reminds me very much of the RCA Victor I was working on, which is I think these are essentially the same design for the most part. Not identical, but very close. So the basic operation of this radio, by the way, is not too hard to understand. Let me just go through it really quickly. The signal from the antenna is presented to this tube. It's then amplified in this tube, amplified in this tube. In this tube, the radio frequencies are done away with, and what's left is the audio sound, the part you want to hear. That is put into this tube, which boosts the audio strong enough to operate these last two tubes, and then put out a fair bit of power to drive the speaker. And this is the power supply rectifier tube that's involved with converting the 120 volt 60 cycle AC power into DC inside this box. We should take these boxes off at this point, I think. And I also should ask myself, what is keeping that on that board? Is this bolted to this board? I'm pretty sure it is. We're probably going to want to get up under it. Maybe the board is hollowed out underneath. No, it doesn't look like it. Looks like it's just a piece of wood under here, so I'm going to have to get this off the piece of wood at some point. Now, is it worth taking these off? Maybe not just yet, because my real intention is to operate this radio and see and hear what it does before I get in there and monkey around with everything. So I should stay focused on really achieving that. And that really means defeating the switch here. I don't really want to cut this wire. I want to leave this just the way it is as much as possible. Any chance I could just shove that in there and son of a gun if that doesn't work? So this could be why the owner was saying to me that the switch sorta kinda maybe problem, maybe I have the feeling the owner either discovered that this had cracked or perhaps cracked it himself in some way. The risk with all these materials is that they're brittle, and when you don't expect them to shatter, they do. So there's a metal clip here. We could pop open that clip, take this back off. That would cause it to fall right apart. These bendable clips are one-time benders usually. You bend them open, fine. You try to bend them back, they probably break off. It's done. So again, there's one-way trips with these things. You know, I could get inside here and do something to essentially fix the radio so it's on. that means really getting into it. I don't think I want to do that just yet. Okay, so going back to the switch, I'm going to make a decision. Should I cut the wire, take the switch apart, and get this piece out of it? What do I need this for? Can I get a clip in there somehow or something? Just anything temporary. Can I jam this in here, flip the switch, and have it lock in? You know what? That spring part is now pushing up against this. Other than the fact that with this way, perhaps this will become live. This will probably work okay. Okay, so on that note that it might become live, it's right here in front. I'm going to bag it. My God, I've been going for an hour already. Holy smokes. It's okay, we're going to take it to the point where we're playing this radio. That's where we're going. I'm going to put that in there. And this is now step 4. This may or may not work. Okay, we're going to power's off. I'll plug it back in. Oh, Jimmy, you need the speaker. Okay, so this is a challenge too. Speakers in the cabinet, the wires are only so long. We're going to want to take the speaker out in any case. Oh my gosh, that's not an easy deal either. That's me wiggling the speaker around, it's loose. So I'm going to get the speaker out. I'll stop the video at this point. I'm going to get the speaker out and get it up on top of the bench here. And you know what I think I'm going to do? I think maybe I'm going to stop this video here. I'll post it at this point, and I'll carry on, and we'll post another video of it operating. I think. I'm not sure what I'll do. Maybe that's what I'm going to do. So I'll say thanks for watching at this point. But maybe I'll carry this video on. I don't know. Decisions.